Hey folks, this is Billy DKY, the truth seeker that simplifies and demystifies. This is the Ultimate Fighter Finale 10 predictions. And I'm not going to talk about the actual fighters from the show because we really don't know enough about them to make any great predictions. So I'm just going to talk about the 4 fights that they've already shown on the website. Okay, so let's talk about the first fight. Matt Hamill versus Jon Jones. This is an interesting fight. I'm really excited about Jon Jones and what he brings to the UFC because he's an extremely talented guy. He really handled Stephan Bonnar, which I didn't expect it. I figured he was going to get handled by Stephan Bonnar. This fight is going to answer the question: where does Jon Jones rank? Is this fight going to raise his ranking, which I think it will? And Matt Hamill, I don't think it really tells us a lot about Matt Hamill. I think Matt Hamill's pretty settled on where he's at. He's a top 20 guy. Don't see him really rising in the top 10 or top 5. And I don't ever see him being champion. With Jon Jones, though, it's still iffy. You know, there's a lot to still be answered about him. You know, as he's challenged by other guys that are higher levels or potentially higher levels. How is he going to handle it? What's it going to expose about his game that's weak? Because I think up to this point, he's just basically been a striker, and you know, good at keeping people off him, taking him to the ground. So I don't really remember him having a submission game. I'm not saying he doesn't have a game. I just hadn't seen it. I think this fight all boils down to one thing: Jon Jones is on another level, just another level of being than Matt Hamill. I mean, Matt Hamill's a really strong guy, but he's sort of, you know, not a meathead, but that more of a meathead kind of guy. So I think it's all going to boil down to that. However, if Matt Hamill can get his hands on Jon Jones, he might be able to eke out a decision or ground and pound Jon Jones. But I'm not really convinced he can even do that because I just think Jon Jones is so high-spirited he can break out of a hold if Matt Hamill gets him, but you never know. If he gets one of those wrestler holds where he really just puts a lot of chest-to-chest kind of stuff, then he may be able to do it. So I asked this question: how could Matt Hamill win? I think Matt Hamill could win by decision, and he could also win by ground and pound. However, I don't see either one of those happening. How could Jon Jones win? I think Jon Jones could win by knockout, which I think he will, or the knockout will set up something submission from the ground. So I mean, it'll start from a knockout. You know, I don't know. Maybe he's got great submissions. We just haven't, you know, we haven't been exposed to it because he hasn't had to resort to it. So, probability breakdown: 65% Jones, 35% Hamill. Next fight: Franky Edgar versus Matt Veach. I don't think this is going to tell us much about Franky Edgar. I think Franky Edgar's a top 5 guy. We know that. I am surprised he's fighting a lesser guy this time. Since his win over Sean Shrek, I figured he'd, you know, move him up to something more title contention. But this is going to tell us a lot about Matt Veach. If Matt Veach is an up-and-coming fighter, then and he does well against Franky Edgar, if he actually dominates Franky Edgar, that really bodes well for him. Because I do not believe that he has lost a fight. No, he's 11-0, but then again, it just depends on who you're fighting. So if he's not an up-and-coming champion, then I really feel sorry for him drawing Franky Edgar for his second fight in the UFC because it's going to be a rough night. So obviously I have to go with Franky Edgar. I don't know enough about the other guy to say much. Next fight: Stann versus Rodney Wallace. I don't think it's going to tell us much about Stann. Stann's, you know, top 50 guy. I don't know if he's much more than that. I think, just to make a point that I had made in a previous video, Stann illustrates my point about looking tough outside the UFC, but not tough inside the UFC. Because in the WEC, Stann's, I mean, he looked like a beast. But now, you know, I think his last fight against Krzysztof Kaczynski, I mean, he looked pretty weak in there compared to him, which I didn't expect that. I was expecting a really good performance. So, like I said, I don't think it's going to tell us much about Stann. Rodney, I think we will learn something about Rodney Wallace. I looked at a picture, tried to look up a little stuff. I didn't find much, but I think he looks like a tough guy, but you know what? Looks ain't what fighting's all about. So we'll learn something about him. I'd have to pick Brian Stann just because I know the name more, but I'm not. It's more about learning. It's not picking a winner in this fight. Okay, next fight, John Howard versus Dennis Hallman. I think this is going to be an interesting fight because it's going to teach us something about both of them. We already know a little bit about Dennis Hallman. You know, those of you who've been around a while. He's supposed to got 2 submission wins over Matt Veach. I think one was in the UFC and one was before the UFC. So that in itself says that you're a tough guy. You know, and I think he's more like a Jeremy Horn kind of guy. I think he's going to be great at submissions, but not really at anywhere else. And I think that's what kind of guy. He's never going to go to the top being a champion. I think he's more acquired when they acquired whoever they just acquired. So it'll be interesting. Another point on Dennis Hallman, he has 70 fights. And I think 57 of them by wins, 11 losses, and 2 draws. So, I mean, he's definitely a tough guy. And I've seen a couple fights of him. But, again, you can't really judge him if they ain't in the UFC because it may not be top flight competition. John Howard, I don't know if I've seen him or not. So we'll just learn something about him. So not a whole lot really on this one as far as predicting, just more throwing thoughts out there. And again, I'm not going to really discuss I may do another video talking about the actual fighters from the Ultimate Fighter, but I don't see a whole lot of reason because I don't, like I say, you don't know them enough. And I'll do a post-fight video of the Ultimate Fighter 10 finale. So if you want to, after the finale, you want to get on here and chit-chat in the comments, I'll have a video out there. And as always, please rate, and later, folks.